everyone. I'm thrilled to welcome you to today's fireside chat on one of the most exciting and transformational shifts happening in our industry right now, agentic AI as it applies to advertising. I'm sure everyone on the call has some thoughts about it. My name is Charles Phillips. I'm a co-founder and one of the managing partners at Recognize. Recognize is a $3 billion plus private equity firm focused only on tech services, and media operations and ad ops is one of the areas we focus on. And we are part investor in MediaMet, one of the sponsors of this call. So that's why we're on this call right now. So as ad ops professionals, I think everybody's spent years building workflows around automation, thinking about how this should work for precision and scale. But agentic AI takes us into a whole new territory. We're now talking about systems that can not only assist, but act, operating as intelligent agents that diagnose issues, execute tasks, optimize campaigns, and collaborate with humans, and in some cases, replace some of the tasks humans used to do. We'll talk about what makes sense there and kind of how that transition looks and where do we end up. So we're going to explore that across all platforms, publishers, and enterprise technology ecosystems, and what it means for the future of your teams. So to get started, like each of the panelists, to take a minute and just introduce themselves. We have a great lineup here of people with extensive experience and professionals in this area. So I'd like them to introduce themselves one at a time. So Susan, you want to start?
Sure. I'm Susan Parker. I'm SVP of ad product and innovation for The Atlantic. I've been in the media and ad operations space for a long time. I've been at Hearst, Nexstar, New York Times, did some consulting for Gannett. So I've been around the block with publishing, and I'm really excited to be part of this panel.
Great. Sanjay?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sanjay Bhakta. I'm the Chief Product and Technology Officer at Condé Nast. I've been in the media space about 15 years or so, but various, not exactly the kind of media that Condé Nast is in at the moment. I was with Pearson before this, which is more education, publishing, and prior to that, I was with HBO for a few years.
Great. Krishan?
Hey, everyone. Krishan Bhatia. Good to be here, Charles. Thanks for having us. I most recently led the global video advertising and partnerships business at Amazon, trying to scale our Prime Video and other video touch points across the globe in terms of introducing advertising monetization. Prior to that, I spent almost 20 years at Comcast NBC Universal. In my last role, I was president and chief business officer for the ads business at NBCU. Initiated and wrestled with many of the issues that we're going to talk about today, and excited to dig in how AI will help accelerate innovation and partnerships.
Great. Rajiv?
Thanks, Charles. Thanks for hosting this and thanks for inviting us. I'm Rajiv Bhutani. I'm the chairman and CEO of MediaMint. Prior to this, I was running a developer platform. It was primarily a Google venture-backed platform. And then I spent a fair amount of time at Accenture, where in my last role, I was the group technology officer at Accenture for comms, media, and technology business, helping companies at the intersection of technology, media, and innovation. So it's a pleasure to be here and look forward to the conversation.
Well, I guess agentic AI, it's so new. You're bound to have a wide range of opinions. So I've seen everything from it's not really ready for prime time, and none of this has an ROI. It's not really working. To what Meta says, the ad supply chain, the life cycle of conception, the content, the campaign execution, the measurement will all be automated with agents out of the sky or something. So there's a wide range of opinions. I'd love to each of you just to kind of summarize where we are, what you've done so far, what you think the potential is, and kind of how real is it as of today anyway. Susan?
Sure, I can jump in. We at The Atlantic, we are very firmly of the opinion that we are for humans by humans as it relates to our journalism and the custom ad content that we create. But that said, we very much see AI as an opportunity to help us be more efficient, and helping our humans be good at the things humans are good at. we really strive to deliver best-in-class advertising experiences, and that is everything from the custom content and events that we create, as well as the delivery and just day-to-day service. We want to be the best in the business. And in order to do that, that requires, real focus from our teams. And so, we've been really trying to focus on where can we use AI to mitigate and alleviate some of the highly repetitive tasks that aren't particularly valuable for a human to do, but are very important to get right. There's, as everyone who's ever been in ad ops knows, there's a lot of rekeying of information between different systems, reconciling of information, lining up tags from one place to another. It's tedious. Humans don't love that kind of work. It can be error prone, and so we really are looking to areas where, AI and agentic operations can help with those, obviously overseen by a human. We're not totally there yet, but we are actually, in full transparency, starting to work with Media Mint on some of this, and we've had good early success. And, really our goal is to alleviate as much of that sort of busy work, if you will, over time so that our humans can really dive in and do their best work. And also think about new ad formats, right? Because it's not just our workforce or workload, it's also new AI ad formats and how do agents change advertising creatives as well. So there's a lot of thinking we're doing in that area as well.
So Rajiv, maybe you can talk about what you're building to support what Susan has been, sounds like she's early on, but working with you guys. What have you guys launched?
Yeah, indeed. From our perspective, as a partner, what we believe, Charles, is that we are equally accountable when we look at what's happening in the agentic world and AI world. We are equally accountable for driving innovation and bringing thoughts and ideas to a partner where we can go and improve efficiency and productivity and cost savings across the organization. So as a part of that, we have leveraged our domain experience. We work with over 150 customers. A number of them are publishers. So we've leveraged that domain experience along with AI to develop a platform, agentic services platform. And quite honestly, we've evolved into an agentic services company as a part of that. So that's what we've done. We launched our platform called Mia a few weeks ago. It was a pretty successful launch. And the approach we are taking is more persona-based. So we are bringing in an agentic services platform or an agentic operations platform where historically, if there was work that was being done through humans, so like, Susan, as you were mentioning, with all the tedious work, how can we transform that from just being human-oriented to agentic services first, but with entire control of humans, right? So with human in the loop. So that's what we're doing. And taking a persona-based allows us to come in and sit alongside all of the technology platforms versus waiting for those platforms to get transformed for realizing the benefits. So that's what we're doing.
Great. Sanjay, what's Condé Nast doing? Are you guys going down this path, and how transformative could it be over time?
Yeah, I mean, we're using AI in various different use cases, actually, and we have been, for quite a while, but the ad side is not one of them yet. I think there is, we are looking at that particular area right now to see what opportunities exist. I believe there are opportunities in terms of campaign optimization, especially with targeting. I think we could get far more precise with using AI, but we're not quite there yet. Still early days for us, but as Susan said, just like the Atlantic, we are not using AI for any of our content creation or any of our creative stuff. That is still done with the editorial expertise that we have.
Just curious, do any of you see content creation as a future down the road, enough confidence in that it's reliable enough for you to let content be created by an AI, an agent for you?
Did you ask me that question?
Yes. Do you
Yeah,
see that
I just this week I saw Business Insider, announce that they're starting to create news articles using AI. But I think from a Condé Nast perspective, we're not a news reporting agency. It might work for a news outlet type situation, but all of our content that we create is original and it's creative, and we believe that is what people are going to be looking for in the AI world. There's so much AI generated content out there. I think the brands that are authentic and creating genuine content that people find valuable are the ones that are going to be left standing at the end of this. I think brands that are producing content that is more commonplace and similar to what 8 other outlets are doing are probably going to have a hard time surviving this new wave of AI and LLMs.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. Same here as, as I said, we want to use AI to help the humans have more time to do the things that only humans are truly good at. We will not ever use AI for, any of our written journalism or our ad contest, custom content creation. There may be times where people, use it to help, fact check or things like that, but, it will always be humans actually creating the real content.
Krishan, you had a very good viewpoint when you were at Amazon running global video and advertising partnerships. Do you see a point in time where all the ad buying will be automated with agents negotiating with agents? Just curious as you see this evolving.
Well, I would broaden it and not just focus on that use case specifically, but the fundamental areas that I was looking to innovate on during my time at NBC Universal, and then got to partner with many great leaders at Amazon on were, as we've just discussed, workflow inefficiencies, and everyone is developing their kind of point solutions to improve internal workflow and then workflow at the intersection of buy side and sell side. There was also a huge push at NBCU that was customer led about standardization in order to scale certain ways of buying and selling and planning media. And this was prior to even DSPs starting to take shape and programmatic advertising becoming the majority of kind of media demand. But that is a customer-centric use case that basically addresses the continued fragmentation we see, in the marketplace overall, and not being able to have to reinvent the wheel any times over when you're looking at creating audiences, modeling those, building campaigns off of that, optimizing those campaigns, and then, measuring them ultimately for outcomes. So that was another big theme. And then the last one, which I think is probably the most exciting one for us in the media business, which is why I'm a big proponent of AI-led innovation to help unlock both new use cases, but also actually drive growth above and beyond the norm of advertising moving, in line with GDP, is there's a massive democratization that comes along with lowering the barriers of entry for mid and small and long tail advertisers, whatever names we give, millions of merchants around the world that can now more effectively participate in full funnel media. And at Amazon, I got to work with my peers a lot on solutions that are getting at unlocking that potential. We were moving both upstream into the top of the funnel to get big brands to embrace Prime Video and our sports franchises, and our mass reach vehicles. But at the same time, we were also looking to grow the merchant base of Amazon that sells product in our stores, and therefore is able to now get a multiplier impact from running brand and top of the funnel campaigns. And to me, that is going to create more rather than less demand. And that's a net positive for us as a business, whether you're creating content and monetizing it with advertising, whether you're selling goods or services and have an advertising monetization revenue stream. And to me, that's actually more exciting, Charles. I know that's a long way of answering your question, than sort of purely focusing on our bots and AI agents going to ease the transaction. I think there's a lot of that will happen for sure for kind of base level media. But I think it's more exciting to think about the potential of actually broadening the addressable market for advertisers by using AI innovation to help bring those customers into the fold that have historically not been able to participate.
Yeah, that's a good point to pivot to as we broaden that market. At the same time, do you hyper personalize it as well? Because theoretically, you could have an ad of one for everyone. That may be advisable for some types of products. On the other hand, you may not want that. You want a consistent message for everyone. So and I guess everybody on the panel, how do you think about that? On what end of the spectrum do you fall?
Well, and I see this may be somewhat jump with a question that just came in, when it comes to sort of, I think, hyper personalization. And I don't know if you want to read the question, if you want me to, but
go ahead.
Yeah, so one of the questions that came in is if authenticity is the differentiator for advertisement, won't original content become table stakes once every brand claims it? Is real authenticity actually about brand alignment, not the production method? And if I'm interpreting the question correctly, but also is what you were just saying, I think one of the questions that comes up is, about that brand alignment, right? And a lot of people are talking about how to use AI to create these personalized one-to-one experiences. My personal perspective is that it really very much, I think, depends on your brand as a publisher and the brands that you're working with. I don't think there's a right answer that fits all. I think for The Atlantic, right, our authenticity is in our journalistic ethics, our journalistic process, our authority, the care with which we treat often very complex subjects. That won't change because that is the reason our, subscribers come to us and why our brands want to work with us. And so that will never change. When it relates to advertiser content, where we also feel that, it's very important to have authentic brand voice. Many of our brands are, we think very top of the funnel here, right? Luxury brands like a Rolex, for example, and I don't, want to speak for them or any other brand, but many of the brands we work with are very careful. There's a great deal of sanctity around their brand voice, and personalizing for each user doesn't always get the brand right. As I'm sure anyone here has ever played with some generative AI, even when you provide real specifics, sometimes the outcomes are just a little, in the margins of what you'd want. And so I think that it remains to be seen whether brands really have an appetite for that level of personalization, or if, and especially if you think about like luxury fashion brands, they're part of what they do is they really try to put forth their vision. It's not about everyone else's vision. It's about their vision. And getting people to buy into that. So I do think there's still always going to be a place for content that isn't necessarily, getting the message to the right person will always be important, but keeping the sanctity of the message and that authenticity, I think may still be very important for a lot of advertisers. For lower funnel advertisers, where you're really trying to just maybe optimize the call to action, sure, I could see that being a lot more personalized, but I do think that you really have to think about the context and the interplay between the brand and the publisher themselves around what actually will be the right answer.
Great.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think what Susan said made perfect sense. I think the part of that question was, isn't authenticity table stakes? I think it is. I think what sets your brand apart is how much of an authoritative source you are in that particular topic. I mean, if we take our brands, if you look at Vogue, we're the authority in luxury and fashion. And if you take Wired, it's technology. If you take the New Yorker, they're probably somewhat in the same space as the Atlantic. We write interesting long essays about interesting topics. So there has to be something that makes your particular brand an authority in a particular space in order to be able to stand out. Even if you're writing authentic content, but it's somewhat same as 10 other outlets are writing, then that is where it gets very challenging.
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to add on this that when we look at any one of us that are going to a publisher, for us it's about experience, for us it's about knowledge, for us it's about engaging with the publisher platform in line with the expectations that we have. So I think being able to, when specifically on ads, being able to leverage the technology that we have today without improving the relevance and the context, without trying to focus on cost and trying to focus on increasing sort of the usage because we want to go and drive some level of cost efficiency. I think that's what's important. For the advertisers, if we make it easy, because there are a lot of advertisers that may not have the ability to leverage the best technology in order to come in and be part of that particular publisher ecosystem and reach viewers and subscribers. I think if that could be unlocked, then I think you're increasing the addressable market. You're making it easier for brands to engage with the subscribers with the platforms as being a medium. But I think it's about relevance versus trying to use this for any other purposes.
So Susan and Rajiv, there are a lot of questions in the chat on how specifically, for an example, of how this might work, what you're automating for Susan. I know that you just rolled out the platform, so you may not be there yet, but can you describe kind of an example of how you two might work together? What would be automated with an agent? That's kind of people trying to get a grasp of it, what it would do.
Yeah, I can tell you what we're doing and what we're moving towards. And, first and foremost, our goal is never to replace humans. We, as at the Atlantic, our goal is not to use AI to take jobs away. It's to allow us to do more with the people we have, by allowing them to focus on the more important work that, as I mentioned earlier, is, better done by humans. So things in the operational workflow, re-entering data, from one system to another. As I'm sure many people who've on the call who've been in ad ops before, order management systems are a giant pain and they can be slow and it can take a lot of time to move things from an IO to an order management system. Also things like social media campaign management, which can just be very time consuming. There's a lot of just sort of checking on things. Ultimately we want to get to, some more automation around reconciliation and things where, someone is doing comparison type work. Those are all things that we believe can be easily automated and often take up a tremendous amount of time from people who could be spending a lot more time providing, hands-on service to our clients. I would much rather, for example, my team working with clients to actually identify and discuss important insights and learnings from a campaign or potentially identifying optimizations and working towards those than spending the time pulling the numbers. So those are the types of things that we're really looking for. Can we create great insights? Because what I find ineffective about the way things have had to have happened in the past is that it takes so long sometimes for people just to pull the numbers. You'll write a wrap report and kind of throw it over to the client. And I think if you could spend more time throughout the campaign actually working with the client and understanding where their successes are and how you can amplify those successes and less time on doing the grunt work involved in getting there, you're going to be delivering a much more effective outcome to your client.
Susan, you cover this. I mean, Charles, I think it's about how can we make sure that we can focus more on the insights and the higher order value, where all of the grunt work or the manual work, because of the fragmentation of infrastructure, is taken care of using automation and agent.
So let me ask you, Rajiv, you're on the front lines managing these ops for a lot of different clients, and inevitably you're going to have agent sprawl, maybe a couple agents hallucinating, maybe some conflict. How does the human in the loop protocol work to get things back on track? And do you have like an example or sanitized example you can tell us where the agent gets it wrong and the human corrects things?
Yeah, I mean, when we were developing our platform, one thing was very clear for us, which is the accountability is always with the humans, and the accountability and for any of the function or any of the areas cannot be made autonomous. So for every area that we looked at from an agentic services perspective, it's always a combination of agentic services or AI first, but human in the loop. So for example, when we have an agentic platform that's surrounding the media planner and is helping the media planner with different tasks, as an example, creating a media plan, it's always the human that's looking at it and making sure that they can guide it to the right outcome versus a media plan being created at the press of a button and being submitted to a customer or to a brand. In the same way, the example that Susan was mentioning, if there is a campaign that's being run, if it's a social media campaign, identifying which campaigns are underperforming, which campaigns are not delivering to the right outcome and may miss the mark, all of that analysis can be done. And there might be some recommendations that are identified, but the deployment of those recommendations is always in line with the human or the campaign optimizer or the campaign manager. So Charles, I think from a concept perspective, that's the concept. I mean, if you think of it, it's the human sitting in the center with the agents working like a star network, making sure that the activities are being done in an effective manner.
So Sanjay, I know you said you're just now looking at advertising for the agents, but you've used it elsewhere in Condé Nast. Kind of generally stepping back, what are kind of the pitfalls you've seen, best practices to share with the audience that, at least from what you've seen so far, and how to get this right and make fewer mistakes?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest mistakes is we often think that implementing AI is going to completely eliminate humans from the loop, and every use case that we've seen here, that is definitely not the case. We do AI-based voice translation, for example. Unfortunately, that is an area where you're actually taking jobs away because instead of voice artists doing that, we now have the New Yorker essays being completely done through AI, and even that requires at least 2 or 3 rounds of QA to make sure the pronunciations are correct and that it's not made any mistake. And over time, it does get better, but especially pronunciations of names, places, it often tends to get wrong. So you have to have some manual intervention there. We're also using AI for contracts management and rights clearance. So that has been a big challenge for us here. Over 100-year-old company, we have contracts that are paper contracts that are decades old, and often editors want to use an image or something that they've used in the past, and they can't really immediately tell whether this particular asset could be used in a specific market on a specific medium. And it always used to be a request to our business affairs team where the lawyers had to then go dig up the contract, read through the full 16 pages or however long it was to figure out whether they have the rights to use that asset. But now with this system, it practically takes minutes because it at least gives them a clear-cut guidance of green, red, or amber. And if you're green, you're ready to go. Red, you can't use it. If it's amber, then it also shows them exactly what portions of the contract someone needs to look at. So it's really, really fast. So that also means that we don't need a huge business affairs team. It's a much smaller number of people, but we still need those lawyers to be able to help the editors when there is ambiguity about whether a certain asset could be used or not. But I think the bottom line is, it doesn't completely eliminate the need for humans. Pretty much all use cases have to have some sort of scrutiny at the end to make sure, especially if you want to make sure that it is precise and there's no margin for error. You absolutely need humans in the loop.
So Kushan and Susan, anyone else who wants to ask, there's two schools of thought on what happens when we automate more of the campaigns, where one is you get a lot more volume of ads because it's just easier to do. The other is people start to tune them out just because they're overwhelmed and they're concerned about deep fakes and AI is involved. And so I guess the question is, 3 years from now, will ad volume be 15% higher or 50% lower? How do you see it evolving on kind of, if we put ads on steroids, how do we control that, the impact?
Well, I think it's a great question. Sorry, Susie, go ahead.
Oh, I mean, I think I also think it's a great question. I think there's a lot embedded in that question, and I suspect several of us will have different perspectives. I don't know that there's already a lot of ad volume, right? I mean, I think the types and formats of ads will change a lot. I think that humans have a limit of how much advertising they can absorb, right? And advertising effectiveness is still going to matter. And so I think that whatever solutions are out in market are going to still need to focus on performance, and inundating people with more ads or confusing ads or ads that don't feel trustworthy ultimately doesn't deliver the results that advertisers want. And I don't think that solutions that drive towards that will succeed in the marketplace. I think the ones that will are the ones that drive much more demonstrable value and actually help to separate the signal from the noise. So I don't see like proliferation of volume specifically being the outcome. What I do see, though, is that there are going to be formats and methods of receiving advertising messages that don't look like anything we have today, right? As more people use AI tools to summarize content or to do research for them, it will be interesting how advertising message gets sort of baked into that, right? How are brands and publishers going to create advertising that can be ingested by LLMs effectively without distorting the brand message? How can you drive effectiveness through these new channels that are still very much unknown? I think we have to be thinking about those things. So I think you will see volume of ads in new places that don't exist, but that will also be offset by the fact that people are potentially not consuming the original experience anymore. I think that's very much a gray area. Krishan.
I think that's spot on. I was going to say, Charles, I don't think it's necessarily an either or. I believe that you will have platforms that will have a greater ad load, as we call it, whether it's in video or audio or display. But I think AI and in general, sort of greater efficacy of using data to measure against outcomes is going to shift the balance towards more highly performing platforms. And at the same time, I think you're going to have limited consumer time, and there are going to be more brands competing for consumer attention in the right place at the right time. And depending on the brand, those publishers or those media platforms can be quite varied. As we all know, it involves a full media mix. So I think there's going to be a shift both in terms of where ads are growing and where ads are declining. But there's certainly, I think, going to be more demand competing for more of the effectiveness. And so I think you will see a redrawing of the ecosystem where underperforming platforms and underperforming intermediaries and just in general underperforming campaigns are going to be flushed out because AI and big data and automation overall and interoperability, which we can talk about, is going to make it easier for most marketers to find more effective ways of flooding campaigns.
Yeah, I feel like, I agree with you largely. I think I have a feeling that, the overall volume will probably tend to go down. I think there'll be more demand for effective ads that actually work versus volume. I think this, especially with AI browsers coming in and LLM summarizing stuff, they'll probably end up becoming more like, marketplaces themselves for ads. And, Google is slowly getting disenfranchised in that space. And remains to be seen how that whole ad ecosystem is going to work. But this whole idea that we have today where everything is based on volume, you put an ad and you throw eyeballs at it, even if it's paid traffic at times, I think that paradigm is going to change. I think it is not going to be about volume anymore. But fundamentally, the ad market has always been about volume. The whole definition of CPM, you're basically looking to get that, the measure itself is how many eyeballs you're getting on it. And I think that measure, in my mind, is going to change. It's going to be something new that's going to be more about how effective that ad is. There will be probably fewer, but more effective ones.
Yeah, I would totally agree. I think there's going to be a lot more focus on outcomes. And I do think that some of the technology will help us connect the dots where they are difficult to today, right? Often there are different disparate data sets. It can be excessively complicated for humans to sometimes really understand true campaign efficacy, right? It's an age-old problem. And, all of the promise of, different attribution metrics over the years haven't really fully gotten us there. I do think this is where some of the new AI tools can probably bridge some of those gaps much more quickly and effectively and help us get better at determining, true effectiveness. Because, as I think we've all noted, that volume is going to change in, for sure, and in some, potentially somewhat unpredictable ways. And what people, what still will matter to advertisers and marketers is who's buying their products and, how much of it's being bought. That's where the volume's still going to matter, is in what kind of outcomes you drive.
Yeah, and Charles, we are seeing this on the brand side, right? We work with a number of brands, and for one of the leading telcos in Europe, we have fairly advanced conversations underway exactly to the point that Susan, you mentioned, and Sanjay, you were mentioning, which is they are working with us to explore how we can commit to conversion of traffic that's coming to their site, in this case around conversion optimization and personalization and insights versus just looking at a broad volume number. So the brands are starting to also look at that, and they're reaching out to different parts of the ecosystem who can enable them to do so. Absolutely.
Well, AI is forcing a lot of companies to rethink their business model. And I think the ad ops BPO model is one that people are talking about. It used to be based on, or at least today, on full-time employees, billable hours and all that. So Rajiv, are you shifting your business model to outcomes based? And if an agent does the work of 10 people, who captures the value? Do customers understand that? Susan, Sanjay, how do you guys think about that as well? Because the work is getting done, maybe it's getting done better, but it's hard to basically make it all around the number of people involved as opposed to prompts and other things.
I think the number of people overall is going to reduce. I think it's not going to be zero, but it's going to be smaller. I mean, a good use case that we're looking at now is RFP responses, right? We get so many RFPs incoming. We just don't have enough cycles to respond to all of them. So we leave money on the table. But we are now using an LLM to feed all the past RFPs that we have answered, so that we can use that to quickly answer incoming RFPs. So we're responding to more based on past history and how we have done it, rather than just not respond at all. Hopefully that's going to create, more value for us, and we're not leaving money on the table.
Yeah, I agree with that. You mentioned billable hours. I mean, at least in, publishing, we don't charge our clients, for billable hours. We charge them based on, specific outcomes that we're delivering, and campaigns that we're delivering. But I think, as RFPs are a great example, often our teams are busier than we can handle. I mean, I've never met an ad ops team that isn't stretched to the limit. And often some things don't get done. Campaigns, don't make it over the finish line, maybe because somebody didn't have the time to really think about the great RFP, or, we missed an opportunity because we were rushing. And I think that's where I think getting more out of the people you have will enable us to continue to grow our businesses without expanding our teams as much. But also, when you can bring in more business, if you can win more RFPs, it may then open up more opportunities for people to do the people work, like building those great campaigns. So, in an ideal world, we reduce the barriers to getting more interesting work to do. And people, we can generate new forms of opportunities for people. And just, by reducing the work that is not as well suited for them. But, if we could earn enough and win enough campaigns to be able to have more brilliant creative folks come in and help us, develop incredible custom content campaigns, that would be a huge win.
Yeah, yeah. And, so like Susan said, Charles, that when we look at the advertisers and brands, the commercial model out there is less about humans, right? But when you look at the services side, for the folks that are servicing the publishers, the model is primarily FTE. And I think with Agentic, there is an opportunity to unblock and unlock that. And if it could be aligned to the work or the output or the outcome, wherever it may matter, then I think you're aligning the commercial model all the way through. And I think it can unlock significant amount of efficiency across the board.
We just got a poll back from the audience, and I thought what was interesting, we asked, what's the biggest barrier to scaling AI within your organization? Number one was infrastructure, and number two was data readiness. So any insights on what you had to do, Susan or Sanjay or Krishan, in the past to solve those problems, what you ran into, and any rules of thumb the audience needs to hear?
Yeah, I think the data readiness is probably the number one thing in my mind. Without that, I think without having the appropriate governance and taxonomy and data lineage and all of that on top of your data, I think it's hard to put AI on top of it. And if you do, you'll probably get gibberish answers and a lot of hallucination.
Yeah.
So I think getting your data clean and ready, and as much as you possible into whatever your goal layer is, and having the right level of governance, I think is absolutely the most fundamental thing.
Yeah. And I think a lot of publishers have been on a data journey for a while, right? The importance of first-party data and creating, first-party data sets that are actionable, and activatable across other, endpoints and surfaces, as well as internal analytics. We are actually using, DataBeat, a media company, trying to help us automate a lot of our reporting and getting our data in line so that it's easier to get information, it's easier to get answers. I think that, the data work that companies have been doing, the advent of big data, I think forced the hand for a lot of publishers to start getting their data house in order. But I think now is really showing the importance of having done that and also where you still have work to go. Because I think the better your data is, right, with these agentic AI solutions, the better the garbage in, garbage out is truer than ever. Having your data clean, aligned, and able to act as a guardrail for future output is critical. So I think I think people have spent a lot of time putting data together. I think data cleanliness is probably of paramount important now. The kind of days of having humans sort of manually clean stuff up, that has to probably stop.
Yeah. And are you using AI to clean the data?
I mean, not specifically. I mean, we've been using various models. I get to an extent, yes. I mean, we've been using different automations, to do anomaly checks and things like that for quite some time. We're not using agentic, but traditional sort of machine learning and automation models that we've been using for a while.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this has been a fantastic panel, a lot of experts here. I want to thank you for your time, and I think the audience got a lot out of this. So we certainly appreciate all the insights. So with that, we'll conclude this. There'll be a recording of all this, but this is Media Mint Call. Thanks everyone for joining.